Today's show is all about pricing. Then a little later, we're going to be talking about how you can get started in a real estate career. All this and more coming up. So don't go anywhere because Real Estate Gold starts now. Good morning, everybody. So today is Monday, March 7th, and you are watching Real Estate Gold, the show where we discuss all things real estate related. I'm your host, John Singh, and I'm here with Micah McCrae, the principal broker of the McCrae Real Estate Group.
Good morning, everybody.
So let's get right into it. So the main question that we always hear as real estate agents is, number one, what is this property worth and what is the market doing? So today we've dedicated an entire show talking about pricing. So what are some of the factors that go in that determine what a property is worth?
Well, everybody's heard the old saying of like location, 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 and that's very true. So location is definitely a big one. You're also going to have what kind of amenities does a house have versus another house? What time of year is it? If somebody's looking to buy or sell. If you're around the holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas, that can definitely affect it. You've also got the supply and demand, so how much inventory is actually on the market. So if there's a lot of people that are looking to buy but not enough houses for them to all buy, obviously the demand goes higher, prices rise, etc. And that's what we're seeing a lot of in Northeast Tennessee, where we have a lot of out-of-state buyers, coming in.
So let's break those down. So the first one, location, because the way I kind of like to describe it is you've got macro locations,
Yep.
which is your large overbranching areas. So like different states will have, you'll see a lot of different prices from different states. But also within each state, you can have different areas. So like for Tennessee, the value of homes here is going to be completely different than what they are in Nashville or Memphis or Knoxville,
Or
some of your
Gatlinburg,
some of your big city areas. So kind of break that down.
So when you're obviously looking at state to state, you may find an easy comparison that most people will understand is like you go buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in California, even though they have macro and micro locations as well. But let's say a typical 3-bed, 2-bath in California would be, anywhere between $700,000 and $800,000. Well, that same 3-bed, 2-bath here may be closer to like $225 under the current market conditions, maybe even $250. In some cases. So there's obviously your state comparisons. Now, our version of a house that may be like $225, $250 for that 3-bed, 2-bath. If you compare it to like Nashville, you're going to have a bigger difference there, especially if you're within the city of Nashville proper, or if you're outside of it in Franklin. Those areas are populated with more expensive homes, that kind of thing. Still may be a 3-bed, 2-bath, but because you have so much demand in that area, the prices will obviously be different, and there'll be more of a demand for it and less supply to cover for that demand. Versus like a place where we're at, which is a smaller town, about an hour east of Knoxville, Tri-Cities area, you may have something that is along the lines of, the 225 to 250 range, versus like Nashville is going to be maybe around 300 to 350. So you've got these different micro areas all along in each state and each area that will definitely make an effect on the price.
So as far as like amenities, because I think a lot of people get confused about how amenities affect the sale of their home.
So that's also done on a tiered type situation. So if you have, let's say, granite in a $100,000 house or a $150,000 house, that's a major upgrade for that price range. Whereas like if you're looking at a $200,000 to $300,000 house, granite starts to become more of of a normal thing that you're looking for in that type of house. Otherwise, it's not what we would consider average condition. It's actually below average if you've got Formica when every other house in that price range has granite. And then when you're getting up into the $500,000 to $1 million houses, they may have some granite, but they also have a lot of quartz and some other rare type of stone top countertops. So you're going to have all these different things that you compare to. So granite in a price range of where granite's normal isn't going to have as much of an impact, as versus like what it would have in like something like $100,000 or $150,000 price range.
Yeah, so when you get into certain price ranges, you basically expect certain things to be in the home already.
Yes.
So like that's why, a granite countertop may or may not affect the value of the property. So how does time of year, of course, this question doesn't really apply to the market as of current, but how does time of year generally affect the value of a home?
Well, typically, pre-COVID, pre the mass rush to the southern states and Tennessee, that kind of stuff, you saw like more of a decline in sales between like November, December, and January. And then you would see it start to ramp up a little bit February and March, and then it would start to incline around April, May, and June, and start hitting its peak in June, July, and August, that kind of thing. Whereas now it's not as much of a bell curve; it's more of a flat, steady decline, and then more of like this, and then it starts coming back up because we do have such a demand and not enough supply. So there's still a lot of people coming from out of states that have decided to move toward the South and Tennessee and Northeast Tennessee. And so our seasons have definitely changed a lot. And for the better for most people. When you're trying to buy something, maybe as somebody who's living here and you thought that was going to be the time to go look. Not anymore. I mean, it's just as busy as it is during the summer. But, we're definitely having seasons, but it's just not as drastic as it used to be. Now, whether that changes and goes back, we won't know.
And that's kind of the same along the lines with how much inventory there is, because the inventory currently is what is really driving all these property prices just skyward. And we'll be taking a look at the market report a little later. So describe the CMA in that process and how the CMA is used in a pricing strategy.
So the comparative market analysis is used to compare what your property is and compared to what it has, whether it's the amenities that we talked about earlier, like granite countertops, within that same price range or that range of prices that we think it's going to fall into. And then basically we take that and compare what you have compared to what other people have. And then there's going to be these micro adjustments that we have to make in that CMA, such as, you may have a 4-bedroom versus somebody else has a 3-bedroom, so we have to make an adjustment for that. Your house may be older or newer than other properties that are on the market. So we have to make adjustments for that price range as well. And then square footage, that kind of thing. And we're doing it so we can compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges so that we can get a closer, more tight-knit range of what your house is worth. And then from there, depending on how fast you're wanting to sell it, we can adjust the price because obviously the lower you are below market, the faster you're going to sell it. The more above it, the longer it's going to take. So we make those adjustments from there once we get a good idea of what your house is actually worth.
And then the last one I've got here is discuss the days on market and how the days on market change the value of a property. Because as far as, a property that's already on the market, to me, the days on market is the biggest factor that will change the value.
It does. However, as far as like the direct value change, it doesn't change the value of it as much as it changes the perception of the value. So when you're looking at days on market, the longer something sits on the market, the more of a stigma, you could say, that property has. And therefore, people are assuming there's something wrong with it. So they're going to start offering lower and lower prices for that property. which is why you try to price it as correct as possible up front, so that you don't hit that stigma. But basically, what you're looking at is a perception of value that nobody else wants it, so why would I want it top deal? And then people will come in and make lower offers because of that perception, and therefore start driving the value down on a house that really hasn't changed in value, but the market's what's really dictating it. So, in effect, it does change it, but not for the value of the house itself.
So how can a buyer take all this information and data and use that to determine what purchase offer to make on a property they're interested in?
Well, definitely a buyer would want to have a buyer's agent that does a CMA for any properties that they're looking at, just to see if it's actually priced correctly, because you don't know until you actually do a CMA to see where everything else is, which can give you a good idea of what something's worth. If it is priced correctly, you can also look at data in some of our reports that will give you an idea of what's the average closing price versus list price. And then you can use that in conjunction with your days on market to get an idea of what the types of time frame is average for that style of house, that maybe that market, whatever. You can see if it's been on the market longer than the rest of them. If it has, why is there a reason for that? Is there some damage to it or something that has to be upgraded to bring it up to average condition? Those kind of things. And those all have values attached to them, which you can actually use to negotiate your price down and get it priced correctly if it's overpriced. And then, of course, just using general ideas of what is the supply and demand for the area. Is there a good reason? Is the person buying looking, or the person selling looking to move faster and really needing to get out of the house, because that gives you an advantage as far as like negotiations go. Because if they're willing to move quicker, then obviously the price can drop just to make that happen faster for them.
So, hey, we've still got a lot more left to discuss. Next up, we'll be discussing how you can get started in a career in real estate. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
In Tennessee, the seasons come and go. But our season never ends. To be the best, it takes an entire team working together for a common goal. The McRae Real Estate Group has a mission of changing the real estate industry. We value our clients and believe in serving with humble integrity. We are data-driven and use science to influence our decision-making. Northeast Tennessee is our home, and home starts with us.
And we are back. So our next topic for the day is how you can get started in real estate. And everybody knows that the real estate market right now is just going absolutely nuts. So we've seen a lot of people that are interested in getting involved in real estate. So what are kind of some of the requirements that you have to meet in order to get licensed to be a realtor?
So obviously you're going to have your education stuff that you're going to need. You will need state minimum requirements, and we'll of course cover those all here in a little bit. You'll have to pass a national and state exam. You're going to have to, of course, have like errors and omissions insurance, those kind of things. You'll have to pass a background check, and not that they're worried about like traffic tickets or any of that kind of stuff, but what they're going to be looking for, at least in Tennessee, they're going to be looking at like felonies, those kind of things, any kind of financial crimes. And of course, once you pass all those things, you'll just apply for your your license with the state, and then once they process everything, they'll get it mailed out to the brokerage that you picked, and the broker will hang that on the wall, and then you'll be officially licensed.
So next month we'll be talking about, picking a brokerage and what kind of things to look for with that. But, how difficult is this real estate exam, the national and state exam? Because everybody's heard that, it's a really tough test.
It is a pretty tough test. However, with the exception of a few people that I know that have got like test anxiety type issues, if you really study your stuff, and know it pretty well, you're going to do fine on the test. Maybe you'll have to take it once or twice, but you're probably going to end up passing at least one of them, and then you only have to go back and take the second one, versus having to retake everything all over again if you fail one part. And it's not the end of the world by any means if you do.
So, it really comes down to picking a good real estate school to start with, because they're going to give you all the tools you need in order to pass these tests. They basically teach you how to pass this test, because real estate is like a lot of other professions. You learn all this information to pass the test, and then you can pretty much throw it all completely out the window because it's not necessarily practical. You learn a lot of definitions that are useful and helpful, because you learn a lot of terms that are common in real estate and some of the laws and all those types of things.
Yeah, so you're gonna learn a lot of stuff in the classes, but as far as like being practicality of like using it in your business, those kind of things, that's where your broker comes into play. They really teach you how to succeed at being a real estate agent. Most of the education stuff is required basically just to pass and get your license of what they think is a requirement. But there's so much more involved in it that kind of stuff is really just a drop in the bucket of what you learn through experience, through your broker training you, your continuing education, which, there are so many different things that you do. There's ethics, there's all kinds of different things that you get into, and they're very beneficial to what you do in a business. But most of your real education that will help you succeed and be a professional at this is going to come after the fact of your licensing.
So let's just kind of quickly break this down. So step one would be signing up for a real estate school.
Yep.
After that, what's next?
So once you actually sign up and take your 90-hour class, it's basically two parts. It's a 60-hour and a 30-hour. But once you take those two classes and get through those and pass your exams, which here in this state we use PSI. Pretty sure they're in all 50 states as far as like the requirements go, as far as like who can give you the test. But once you pass your national and state exams, then you look at filling out or if you don't already have a broker, you'll start looking for a broker. But once you have your broker, you'll start filling out the paperwork for your state, getting that turned in, and then once your license is approved and everything else, and you've got all the requirements that the state requires, you'll have your license in the mail in a few weeks, hopefully, depending on how fast your state's moving.
So I know we'll talk about this more next month, but at what point should someone start looking for a brokerage?
I think they ought to start looking and figuring out who they like or don't like, even before they sign up for classes. Because you don't really know what you're looking for unless you actually start looking at it. And you may find out that one broker may be really great, and then you may find out there's another one that's, that you've talked to after your license is done, and they're not even in the same ballpark, of like what you get to take home, for example. Because there's splits with almost every single brokerage, and a lot of them, they may tout like super low fees and stuff like that, but that's a sacrifice of something else, depending on what the company is or who the brokerage is.
So for anyone that is looking into getting into real estate, what would be, this is coming from a principal broker yourself, what would be your advice for for those individuals?
Well, I mean, I guess as far as like your brokerages go, you really want to get out there, talk to several of them, unless you've got working relationships with anybody at another brokerage that you may already know what you're looking for. But, get out there, talk to a bunch of different ones, and then have them sort of get your ideas of what you're looking for, what the different options are. And if you got a good broker, you're going to have somebody that's going to basically tell you the positives and negatives to theirs or anybody else's if they're honest about it.
So the last question, are you hiring new agents?
Yes, we're always trying to hire new agents.
So if you noticed, look how quick he pepped up. Like, are you hiring? Oh. Hey, don't go anywhere. We're going to be back right after this.
Did you know that on average, your customers spend more time online than they do at work every single week? Your customers are online. Your business needs to be too. Businesses have always used advertising like television, billboards, and radio to reach their customers. Today, there's another opportunity. Digital. With digital advertising, target your customers more precisely than ever before. Advertise to a specific demographic, those searching for your services, or those who visit your business. You can even target your competitors' customers. The best part? You can see your marketing dollars at work. Reports will show you who views, clicks, and engages with your ads. Tracking that finally provides the measurable return on investment you crave. Target customers where they spend the most time. Start digital advertising today.
We're back. So now it is time for our monthly market report. So as you all know, the market in real estate is still going absolutely crazy. So the first metric we want to look at is our absorption rate. So let me pull that up. So our 2022 year to date, the absorption rate is 0.99 months. And as long as I've been in real estate, I've never seen it get this low. So kind of briefly, I know we discussed it last time, but kind of discuss what the absorption rate is again.
So the absorption rate is basically your, if no new houses came on the market and how many a current inventory, how long would it take to liquidate that same amount of inventory? Under the current market, like you said, it's 0.99 months. So we're looking at a little less than 1 month to liquidate our current supply of properties.
So the next one we want to take a look at is the days on market. So currently we are sitting at 80 days on the market. So it's actually kind of increased here in the past few months. So how does that kind of, do you have any kind of explanation for why it would be increasing again?
Well, your time on market, even though it may be increasing a little bit as an overall market, that could be because there's more people migrating to one specific part of the cities versus other parts. And because your days on market can be different as from one area to another. Like if we look at Johnson City, for example, or, their time on market may be a lot smaller than what it is in Greeneville. Well, because everybody's moving over to Johnson City, Greeneville's, for example, its days on market may be rising, and that be raising the overall average.
So another factor that can do it is how backed up all your loans are.
Could be.
If, federal loans, a lot of times the federal government gets backed up on loans, which pushes out your closing date. So that's why those numbers can continue to go up or kind of level out at some point. So the next one is our sold to list ratio, and we're currently sitting at 96.2. So there's not much of a change here in the past few months with that one. So what is the sold to list ratio?
So basically, whatever the property was currently listed at to what it was under contract and closed at is that ratio. So as of right now, I believe it said 96.2%. So 96.2% of any list price that's of what a property is currently listed at is probably where it's going to average close by the time everything's said and done through title.
And then the last one I've got is our average sales price for 2022, and that is sitting at $252,719, which is a pretty significant increase over what our typical average is.
I'd say, what was it, pre-pandemic? I think we were right around the 170 to 180 range, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe it was, when I looked at the numbers, it was like a 35% increase year over date.
So the supply has definitely decreased and the demand has definitely increased. And a lot of that is because so many people listed properties during COVID, all those different, when prices really started spiking. So a lot of people were really getting out there and dumping properties that they may not have actually sold during their normal cycle. And it's basically caused a supply shortage for most of the areas in East Tennessee. So whenever you're looking at those kind of numbers, the demand has just gone through the roof because everybody's sold a lot of stuff, and we didn't have enough homes really for everybody that was moving in.
So we did get a question that come in, and it says, I keep hearing the term escrow. What is an escrow and how does it work?
So we'll talk about a title company as a whole, which is where your escrow is at. So the property goes under contract, then it goes to a title company, and a title company in the state of Tennessee is who we typically will use. You can also use attorneys or just plain title and escrow companies. Those are pretty much your average people that will close them. And so once it goes to a title company, they'll go do title research to make sure there's no clouded history on the deed, that it's clear that the new owners will actually receive the property without any kind of encumbrances or defects on the title. And then once they know the history is clear, they'll start working on the documents to show how much everybody's got to bring in to the closing table, whether it's cash or from a lender, or whether the owners or the new owner is going to be bringing cash itself to actually purchase the property, which we have found under the current demand happening a lot more and more. But it basically gives them their exact numbers that they have to bring to the closing table to actually complete the transaction. And then once those numbers are given out and everybody agrees on those numbers, they have closing, everything is signed and transferred, and the new deed is transferred over to the new owners.
So that basically does our show for today. We go live every first Monday of each month. So tune in next month, and until next time, we'll see you.